Hey Simply Birders, and welcome back to the channel for yet another gear talk. So today I'm discussing mirrorless cameras and whether you should switch, or if you've never done bird photography before, using mirrorless cameras in your photography. Just before we start, again as usual, to help keep this channel going and growing, if I can ask, please, if you can subscribe to the channel, hit the notifications bell, all that usual YouTube stuff. Your subscriptions and your watches on our videos really help keep the content growing. So yes, if you can do that, that would be great. But yeah, so on with the gear. Just some background on myself from a photography perspective. I've been doing all manner of photography over the years, from starting out in the film days at school. I then went into trying my hand at digiscoping with a little Sony Cybershot attached to my cheap and nasty Tasco telescope. I then went on to Pentax with my first ever really budget entry-level digital SLR, and then went through various iterations of Canon gear. And obviously I've seen the technology grow massively over the years. So the question now, with mirrorless really becoming popular, is should I switch or not? And first off, I'm going to be talking about the Canon gear I use, but note this is not an endorsement for Canon. I'll mention what Sony and Nikon are doing as well, and I'm not specifically recommending any brand. I'm just giving you some hopefully useful advice on what you will see if you switch to mirrorless, and some of the things you won't. So to start off, the first perception with mirrorless is that by switching to mirrorless, you're going to get a dramatic improvement in image quality. And that's subjective. Because essentially, I mean, here's one of my first serious digital cameras I bought, the Canon 40D, and this served me quite well. It's about 12 megapixels, I think. 6.5 frames per second on burst speed, and the noise performance wasn't very great. You couldn't really push this above ISO 800, and you really started to struggle with noise. The autofocus was also slow and rather antiquated compared to the modern autofocus technologies now. So if you were to compare a photo that you took with this camera compared to, say, a photo taken with new mirrorless bodies from any one of the brands, you will see a substantial improvement in really color depth, dynamic range. You'll see much better noise performance. It will be sharper because a higher megapixel count. But when you start going up to the much more modern digital SLRs, so a 7D Mark III, maybe you've got a 5D Mark IV, there are tons of comparative videos out there that will show that you will see some image improvement, but the sensor technology already in those is so good that the jump in image quality is minimal. So if you're on a 5D Mark IV or anything like that, or you know, the equivalent latest Nikon digital SLR bodies, same for Sony, don't expect a dramatic improvements in image quality. You know, the sensor technology is already so good and has been for a while that on straight out the camera comparison of images, you're not going to get a dramatic improvement. However, what mirrorless does do on the newer bodies is what you're getting is speed. So an old camera, and here's my previous pro body I've just moved from. I've been using this 1DX Mark I for 12 years now. Still a beast of a camera, works beautifully. The autofocus is great, but the autofocus is not what it is on the modern cameras. This camera can do 14 frames a second. With the mechanical shutter, most of the mirrorless bodies now can do 16, but when you switch to electronic shutter, you're doing 30 frames a second on some of them, or at least 20. What you also get is, this thing I think has got 64 autofocus points. Most of the modern mirrorless cameras have got autofocus points into the several hundred, and they're not spread in across the sensor like the older cameras were. They're right around the sensor. So your focus area and your accuracy of focus is much better. What you're also getting, if you switch to mirrorless, is you're getting the incredible advancements in pulling AI or artificial intelligence into cameras, where your cameras are looking for certain things. So they're looking for the eye on an animal or a bird, or you can set it to people. And all the manufacturers have got variations on this intelligent autofocus. And I mean, what I've found on my R3 that I'm using now, it is incredibly accurate. I did a photo shoot the other day. I literally shot 150 photographs. I never had one out of focus. So really what you're getting if you're switching to the modern mirrorless is you're getting massive speed improvements. You're getting autofocus that is leaps ahead of previous generation autofocus. So really that's what you are getting. The other concern that some people have is that if I switch to mirrorless, I'm not going to be able to use my old lenses on my camera. And all of the manufacturers have covered that. So whether you're using Nikon, if you're using Sony, if you're using Canon, every single one of them have adapters for their old lenses onto the new mirrorless bodies that allow you to get full autofocus and full functionality of your old lenses. So the benefit of switching to mirrorless is you're getting all the additional autofocus improvements. And later on, when you start buying mirrorless lenses for the particular brand of camera you're on, you're getting dramatic improvements in speed. Because, you know, on these old cameras, 16 frames a second, the lenses were designed to only run at that speed in terms of autofocus. So you put an old lens on any one of the bodies, whether it's, like I say, any brand, your burst speed of fast photographs will slow down because the lens simply can't communicate that fast. So yeah, that's really the pros and cons of mirrorless. The other thing you may have heard is there's something called rolling shutter. And that's where the way a mirrorless camera takes the data off the sensor. It runs down the sensor or across the sensor, or depending on the manufacturer, however they pull the sensor to get all the information. And as they're doing that, if you've got a fast moving subject like a bird or a soccer ball or something, it may distort in shape. And obviously the higher up the scale you go in terms of the budget you're prepared to spend on a camera body, the faster the sensor and the less rolling shutter you get. But do not let that put you off switching to mirrorless. All of the mirrorless bodies have a mechanical shutter as well. And if you're on one of the slower bodies where the rolling shutter is more obvious on high-speed objects, then for that particular situation, you just switch to electronic shutter, and then it's like any good old-fashioned digital SLR, and you get no rolling shutter at all because it's now doing a mechanical shutter like all the old digital SLRs did. So honestly, a lot of people are hesitant of switching to mirrorless because they've heard this, in inverted commas, nightmare of rolling shutter. It's honestly not a problem. You know, your subject has to be moving really fast, and then on top of it, you can switch to mechanical shutter in order to improve the situation and get typical digital SLR quality freeze frames of fast moving subjects. So, you know, if you're going into mirrorless photography now, if you've never done photography, I wouldn't look for digital SLR specials. I'd go straight into mirrorless. It's all moving that way anyway. The reality as well is that from a video perspective, if video interests you, you get much, much better video capabilities. I mean, my 1DX Mark I, this can only do one-off focus at the beginning of a video. It can't even do continuous autofocus during the video. And it only does up to normal HD. It doesn't do 4K or 6K or anything like that. So, you know, mirrorless, honestly, in my opinion, is the way to go when you're ready to switch. Do you have to switch now? Are all the lenses no longer going to be available for whatever brand you're using? And the answer is absolutely not. There are many that are still in production, and there's going to be second-hand copies of them around for years. And I'm quite sure the likes of Sigma and Tamron that are making aftermarket lenses for all the manufacturers will continue while there's a market for them to make EF or a Sony mount or Nikon mount lenses for the digital SLR cameras. So to be honest, if you're getting into photography now, go mirrorless. If you're thinking of switching, just bear in mind, if your camera is very new, you're not going to be blown away by dramatic improvements in image quality. But what you will be blown away, and I'm absolutely blown away by the camera I'm using, is the blazing fast and incredibly accurate autofocus, the subject detection, the improved video quality, and the ability to shoot at incredibly high burst rates. So that is the advantage you're going to get from mirrorless. But don't expect, if you're on a very new camera, to put your existing lens on it and go, oh my word, these photos are way better than anything I've ever taken. You will see a notch up in image quality, but don't expect dramatic, because the likes of the 5Ds and so on, as I've mentioned, the image quality out of those cameras is already vast. People have been doing magazine covers of models with 5D Mark IVs and the likes for years, and no one's gone, oh my word, this thing's horrible, I can't wait for mirrorless to come out so my magazine cover image looks better. They take phenomenal photographs. So really, that's, if you're weighing up mirrorless, that hopefully sums it up. And honestly, if you have any questions, drop it in the comment section below. Also, let us know what you think about the video, and we'll be happy to answer any questions you have about mirrorless if you are thinking of switching. But yeah, I've made the switch and I'm thoroughly enjoying it, and it's well worth it. Anyway, hope you enjoyed the video. Thanks for watching, and see you on another video soon. Cheers, guys.